When God takes away his selected, awaken your spirits, chosen ones. It's too late before the world realizes. The quiet after a storm has a frightful quality, not the type of relief. The sort when you understand all of a sudden that the hurricane's eye was a warning rather than the end. Civilizations, countries, and even individuals have prospered throughout history when the divinely appointed were present. They often, without realizing it, confuse heavenly warnings for background noise, protection for luck, and grace for happenstance. The selected are then gone one day. Those whose words were unpopular because they were truthful, who exuded presence. Nobody was able to explain who had disturbed things that needed to be disturbed. As simple as that. The outcome: a change, a reckoning, a gap nobody anticipated. Don't assume that this is only a metaphor. Major events like collapse, war, anarchy, and judgment have often been preceded by the abrupt removal of important persons. According to the Bible, fire followed Lot's departure from Sodom. Jesus' departure from the temple. There was destruction. Even today, society often only recognizes the significance of certain individuals until irreparable harm has been done. This may be the time for you to start listening if you're among those who dismissed the chosen's warnings like junk emails, scoffed at them, or disregarded what they had to say. Because when God determines that your purpose is complete and it's time to go, it's an event rather than just a departure. And believe me when I say that nobody enjoys what follows. First place, you never came here to console me. Collisions were the reason you were here. The luxury of fitting in is not available to God's chosen people. They are not silent, unheard of, or unconcerned with life. They bring something that upsets the current quo, which is why their simple presence causes conflict, not because they actively seek it out. Just by being there, they compel individuals to either accept or reject the truth as soon as they enter a space. Things change. False narratives, generational cycles, and spiritual complacency start to break through long-standing structures. Sometimes people experience discomfort without even understanding why. It has nothing to do with charm or personality. There's more to it. A heavenly mandate that prevents corruption from becoming undetected. For this reason, God's chosen people often encounter opposition, rejection, and treachery. They're doing precisely what they were assigned to do, not because they're doing anything improper. Their purpose was not to reconcile with dysfunction. They were sent to reveal it. To be loved was never their calling. They were invited to serve as a warning that there is still a limit to darkness. Here's the problem, however. They don't have much time. They were never intended to remain stationary. God takes people out when their purpose is done, not as a last-minute decision, but as a planned action. It will be too late for some to discover their absence. Finally, others will see that the only thing preventing judgment was the exact thing they rejected. There was no consolation for the chosen. What was never intended to stand was what they were here to clash with. Furthermore, their withdrawal is not a retreat after their mission is accomplished. It's a declaration. Second, your departure is not a retreat, but a heavenly plan. Losing is not synonymous with leaving. Failure is not implied by it. Unfinished business or surrender. It is not because they lack the strength to remain that God removes his chosen ones. It's because their entire existence has already fulfilled its purpose. They were just sent to change the mood, never to repair everything. When that is finished, it is not just required to remove them. It is a calculated move. Their leaving might be seen as desertion by some. It may indicate to others that they were not as strong as they seemed to be. People consistently make that error. They believe that God's chosen people are destined to bear the burden of everything endlessly, as if their power, their intercession, and their sheer presence are what prevent everything from collapsing. They were only ever intended to serve as a warning, a catalyst, or a temporary shield. However, the repercussions of what was disregarded, pushed aside, or battled against will be felt strongly after they are gone. Seldom do people realize how important someone's presence is until it is taken away. Things don't just remain the same after the selected are gone. They come apart. Their departure is evidence that grace has changed, not because the selected ones want disaster. God doesn't randomly remove his people. Most people will be prepared for those who believe they had more time, but it's always an indication that something is going to change. Those who believe they could continue to resist. People who believe they were in charge. Because God is not only shifting people when he removes his chosen, they are going to discover what occurs when those containing the storm are no longer in the way. History is being moved by him. Third place, a situation that no longer requires your assistance was addressed by your presence. His chosen ones are never placed at random by God. Whether it's a country, a city, a family, or simply a single individual, they are ascribed to certain times, locations, and individuals for a specific reason. Most people don't even realize they have a spiritual crisis until it's too late, but their existence is a response to it. Here's the reality, however. They were never supposed to remain. Their position was short-lived. Their presence was a supernatural solution to a situation that could not be solved in any other manner, and their mission had a deadline. There is no need for them to stay after that issue has been resolved, whether that means exposing it, moving it, or giving individuals one more opportunity to change. The majority of folks make mistakes here. They believe that those they have selected are just fixtures in their existence. Always. They shoulder the burden and pray constantly. They take the knowledge, the protection, and the cautions for granted. Some people even oppose or dislike them because they believe they will always exist. However, they disappear one day. No justification. Just gone. No wait. At that point, reality takes over. Those who disregarded them begin to sense their absence. Gone was the tranquility that enveloped them, the favor of the supernatural. Lost. The protection that was quiet is no longer there. They then understand that the selected ones were more than simply another voice, person, or presence. Things hadn't gone apart sooner because of them. The reason God eliminates his chosen is because their task is finished, and that isn't a relief for those who are left behind. It serves as a warning, because when the people who are bringing the light are gone, darkness does not just reappear. It takes control. Fourth place, love is not why you were sent. Your purpose was to serve as a warning. Before they understand what it really entails, many like the notion of being God's chosen one. It does not imply approval, acclaim, or adoration. It entails stating things that others do not want to hear and entering areas where you are not welcome. It entails being classified as challenging, radical, or even harmful. Not because you're incorrect, but rather because you're unwilling to keep quiet. History demonstrates this. There was no celebration of prophets. They were killed, banished, and stoned. The greatest of them, Jesus, was not accepted. They betrayed him. The same people Jesus came to help falsely accused him and had him executed. For those he sends, why would it be different? It is not the role of God's chosen ones to console people in their delusions. They are sent to dismantle them, reveal falsehoods, upend established structures, and serve as a reminder that God is watching. Here's the issue, however. Darkness is more beloved by people than light. They do not want to be roused. To be left alone is what they want. Resistance is thus unavoidable when the chosen one attacks with the truth wielding a sword. This is not a personal rejection. It's foretelling. Truth-bearers have always encountered resistance from the world, in the belief that if they quiet the messenger, they can silence the message. They make fun of, reject, or attempt to destroy them. However, both the truth and the consequences of disregarding it are still there. You weren't meant to win hearts, so don't be shocked if you find yourself misinterpreted, rejected, or even despised. It is up to them whether or not they heeded the warning you issued. However, being liked was never your goal. Making ensuring they had no justification when the time came was the goal. The fifth was that the world will never alter the way you had hoped. Every selected person must confront a tough reality. People won't all change, regardless of how much truth they are given. You may preach, warn, pray, and give them your whole being. Some, however, will never awaken. They don't want to, not because they don't comprehend. It's simple to think that people will open their eyes if you just say the correct things or show them enough affection. However, some people's hearts are hard to change. Not everyone is sleeping. Since the truth jeopardizes their illusions, their comfort, or their power, they are intentionally avoiding it. Furthermore, you cannot force the kind of alteration that only God can bring about, no matter how hard you try. Therefore, mending the world was never your purpose. Giving the planet a chance was the goal. Every caution you issued, every word you spoke, and every second you spent attempting to rouse people, you weren't satisfied with it. It was so they wouldn't be able to claim, "I didn't know." When the moment came and everything they had been ignoring finally fell apart. Making people listen is not your responsibility. It is your responsibility to convey the message. It is up to them and God whether they accept or reject. Some will be altered, others won't. In any case, you fulfilled your mission. Therefore, don't harbor disappointment. Don't bear the consequences of their choices. You were never sent with the intention of changing the world. You were sent to ensure that it had no defense when the time for judgment arrived. Number 6, you didn't deserve your hardship. It was a physical message. The betrayals, rejection, loneliness, and pain you endured were never only about you. It wasn't misfortune, retribution, or a haphazard setback. There was a message. You were a prophecy come true, a human-shaped warning. Truth is not the only thing said by God's chosen people. They turn into it. Before they ever speak, they bear the burden of the message in their own lives, in their own scars, in their own hardships. Their very presence is a preaching. The proof of their life is indisputable, even if many disregard what they say. The assaults occurred for that reason. People turned against you for that reason. The reason you were misinterpreted. Why did doors that ought to have opened close? Your life revealed things that others want to keep concealed, not because you were incorrect. You discussed more than simply endurance. You persevered. Not only did you warn of treachery, you survived it. You said more than simply rejection. You experienced it directly. The evidence was your pain. It demonstrated that nothing you stated was just theoretical. It was authentic. And those who observed had a decision to make. Either pretend they didn't see it or learn from your experience. Your grief will lead some people to awaken. Others won't pay attention to it unless they go through it themselves. In any case, your pain wasn't in vain. Therefore, don't consider your scars to be just wounds. They serve as proof that you sent a message that went beyond just warning individuals. Your purpose was to serve as a warning. And whether they paid attention or not, your life will serve as evidence that they had every opportunity to listen. 7th, your quiet now has a greater impact than your presence ever had. Sometimes people are unaware of what they have until it is taken away. They listen, but they don't hear. They observe. However, they don't comprehend. You disappear one day after that. No more cautions. Don't say any more prayers. No longer being there. Keeping everything together. Then reality sets in. There's more to your absence than a simple disappearing. It's an announcement from God. The individuals who rejected you will begin to see the change. The tranquility they assumed was normal. Lost. They were not even aware that they were protected. They rolled their eyes at the knowledge that was lifted. All of a sudden, everything made sense. This is God's way. In addition to protecting His chosen ones, He wakes up others who don't listen while they still have the opportunity. Some people will think back and see their error. Others will rush to fill the vacuum with someone else. But because you brought more than just compassion and wisdom, things won't be the same. It was a gift from God. Furthermore, convenience cannot take the place of duties. Your words will never be heard above the stillness you leave behind. Because what you stated isn't the only thing that people are hearing anymore. The loss of what you carried is being felt by them. And it is the true caution. Your disappearance serves as a reminder that grace has its boundaries. If your presence was an expression of it, you will have to live with the thought that others who disregarded, made fun of, or rejected you had access to something unique and heavenly, but they let it pass them by. The 8th number, For everyone around you, your task served as a final exam. It was never a coincidence that you were in people's lives. It served as a test. For them, not for you. How they handled you, how they answered, and if they paid attention to you or not. It was all being filmed. Some believed they were only interacting with a regular individual. In actuality, however, they were doing a heavenly task. God has used individuals as opportunities, warnings, and second chances throughout history. However, the trend keeps repeating. They are assaulted, abused, and disregarded. In his own hometown, Jesus himself faced rejection. Prophets faced mockery, derision, and sometimes death. The world has a history of failing these tests and then having to deal with the fallout. Some of the individuals you met had an opportunity to identify with you and adjust their behavior appropriately. Instead, they cast doubt on you, spread rumors, or even worked against you. They had the chance for a blessing, but they choose to fail, not because they were ignorant, but rather because they would not believe that God had put anything holy in their path. The test has now finished. Their destiny has been determined by their reaction. They had to treat you well throughout that period so that you would listen and pay attention. It's gone. Some people will discover who you were and what you carried too late. However, the judgment that results when God takes away his chosen is not negated by awareness. It's more than simply moving. Closing the book on those who won't see is the goal. They will now have to live with their decision when the exam has been graded and the results are in. The conflict is larger than you. Number 9. It's a calculated move to remove you. You are not the only person in your life. Your mission extends beyond your own comfort or sense of satisfaction. You are a part of a larger spiritual conflict. Furthermore, God doesn't transfer you at random. It is a calculated move. When a soldier is moved from one position to another, they don't question why. They do not challenge the commands, the time, or the methods. They believe that there is a greater plan, that something is happening that they cannot comprehend, and that God is pulling you from one area to another because your mission has changed. You may believe that you are doing the right things and at the right place, retaining one's position. That's crucial. However, God has an aerial view of the battlefield and is well aware of the plan, and sometimes it entails moving his selected ones. God removes you from a location or season when your duty is complete and your presence is no longer required. Thus, there are other ways to win the battle. Being in the midst of it makes it difficult to comprehend this. You may feel as if you are being ignored, marginalized, or even thrown away. In actuality, however, your removal is a component of a more extensive strategic maneuver. God cares about more than one conflict. He is seeing the conflict as a whole, and sometimes moving the pieces in ways we can't understand is the greatest way to win. It takes a degree of confidence that isn't about seeing the outcome right away, but rather that his purpose is bigger than what we can now understand, to have faith in God's time and strategy. It's not because you failed that he takes you away. The reason for this is because your role has evolved. The fight is currently unfolding in a manner that beyond your capabilities. 10th place. Your presence was the only thing that kept some individuals safe. Many people are unaware that you were more than simply a source of solace to those around you. It served as a shield. Because of you, God's favor was placed on individuals, places, and circumstances. The covering was you. The grace they couldn't earn wasn't theirs. Your life served as a kind of spiritual canopy, offering compassion and protection when none was requested or even recognized. And throughout your whole stay, they were protected by the grace that God showered upon you. That canopy, however, gets taken away when your task is done and God takes you away. They are no longer covered by the grace they once had or the defense they unwittingly relied upon. The repercussions they escaped while you were present will now come back to haunt them. Whether it was a town that prospered, a business that prospered, or a family that remained together, you were in the middle of it all, surrounded by God's favor, which made it possible. The fact that you will be removed will strike you hard. The favor that appeared to follow them without any reason was the portion that they didn't understand originated from you. They will now recognize it for what it was, a temporary loan that was connected to your presence. After you're gone, some will attempt to invoke that protection. It will be too late, however. They never kept the covering you gave them. It was always the outcome of your task, your trust, and your compliance. This will serve as a sharp reminder to some that the grace they once took for granted has disappeared. They will now have to deal with the fallout from their decisions. And they'll question why they didn't see the importance of your presence earlier, maybe too late. 11. You weren't a permanent fixture. You were a momentary disturbance. You were never intended to be a fixture. God's chosen ones are positioned purposefully to cause trouble rather than to camp out. You weren't sent to be a constant or to fit in. A wrecking ball meant to shake things up and start things going. You were a momentary force of heavenly upheaval. Furthermore, that kind of fire doesn't burn in one spot forever. Let's face it. That fire would have gone out if you had lingered too long and attempted to settle down. And what was once a fire of transformation and truth would have been reduced to a heap of icy ashes. The purpose of God's chosen is not to blend in. They are sent to unsettle by Him. It might be a circumstance, a way of thinking, or a population. You were put there to question, rouse, stir things up, and perhaps cause discomfort. The divine wrecking ball is there to drive people out of their complacency and to demolish everything that isn't based on truth or God's will. You see? However, the position is seldom long-term. People would have stopped listening if you had remained too long. It would not have hurt as much. They would have forgotten the task. The purpose of God's fire is not to be extinguished by familiarity. It is intended to burn purposefully, brightly, and powerfully. Additionally, it moves on before it becomes boring when the time comes. You were just there for a short period. You weren't supposed to be here forever. You were sent to make a difference, to stir things up, and then to go on. Additionally, the precise change that was required is left behind after you go, leaving the echo of your interruption. 12. You were only intended to plant in hard soil and not see the harvest. Success isn't always what we expect it to be. Many people define success as seeing the results of their hard work, seeing the tangible fruits of their labor. Success, however, wasn't about reaping for you. It has to do with planting. You were summoned to the rocky or dry soil that no one else could deal with, the hard land that no one else could access. Gathering the crop was not your task. Rather, it was to penetrate the hard, unforgiving areas and cultivate the seemingly inaccessible soil. Since you didn't see the progress, it's simple to feel like your job was unfinished, yet your calling was never about outward manifestations. You weren't supposed to remain long enough to see the crops and plants flourish. It was your responsibility to get the land ready for another person. It was you who broke down walls and circumstances that others believed were irreparable and opened hearts that had been locked for years. Furthermore, you sowed seeds in soil that would later be tended by others, even if you were not around to see the results of your effort. The truth is that not every seed sprouts right away. Some could not even appear throughout your lifetime, while others will take years to grow. However, it does not negate the value of your labor. You were not a harvester, you were a cultivator. The task that no one sees may often be the toughest. The silent, invisible labor of getting ready for a harvest that you may never witness firsthand. Instant satisfaction was never the goal of your quest. It included sowing seeds in areas where others were afraid to go, with the hope that someone else would eventually come along and harvest the fruit. 13. Your departure does not signal the end of your influence. Rather, it signals the start of judgment. God never eliminates His chosen in a silent, undetected way. A clear indication that something is about to change and not in the manner people anticipate. It's a prophetic alert. You were more than a mere presence. When God took you out of a circumstance or location, you were the last call, the last warning. Your effect will continue. It signifies the start of judgment. The final line of defense against what was about to happen was you. Consider it this way. Your time. Words alone weren't enough. While you were there, you had to intervene, stand between God's anger and people in need of compassion, and stop a tsunami of repercussions. It's possible that you felt like the voice nobody paid attention to. Your presence held the storm at a way, even if the individual wasn't appreciated. The storm is free to come now that you have been banished. The people, places, and systems you impacted will now have to deal with the consequences of their actions. You're not being punished here. It has to do with other people's responsibility, how they handled you, how they disregarded your warnings, and how they failed to pay attention to the information you sent. There are repercussions for everything. Your legacy continues after you go. They will be held accountable for their response to what you provided at this point. The outcome of their reluctance to acknowledge the message will now be seen by those who made fun of or abused you. Additionally, it will be too late for some people to wake up. The stillness that results from God moving His chosen is not peace. It is an introduction to judgment. Your leaving will also serve as the loudest reminder to those who didn't pay attention that they had a chance. Glamour was never intended for your task. It had nothing to do with getting praise, blending in, or winning the respect of others. Obedience was always the key. You took the call, answered, and completed the task assigned to you. Since your reward was never connected to material acknowledgement, there was no need for praise or need for acceptance. It was about achieving your goals, no matter how challenging, isolating, or misinterpreted they may be. Don't turn around now that it's time for you to go. The done is the done. Your task is done. Nothing can alter it. The words you said, the seeds you sowed, the lives you impacted, every one of them has been identified. Your compliance was sufficient. Nothing that God has written for you can be taken away. You arrived and did as you were told. It's time to go now. You didn't put in the effort to see the results. It was to fulfill the bigger plan that God had for you and everyone in your vicinity. Therefore, don't question if your travel was worthwhile or second-guess it. They sent you. You did what you were told, and you go immediately, just as written. The rest is in God's hands. Your time here is over. Have faith that your influence will keep spreading. You've done your share, whether you realize it or not. And now that you're gone, you may go with the knowledge that you accomplished your goal just as it was intended. Do not ignore this message if it struck a chord with you. Distribute it. It has to be heard by someone out there. To ensure you don't miss out on more insightful articles like this one, click the subscribe button to remain updated. Similar to the video. If it resonated with you, please leave a comment so us know what you think. Which aspect of this resonated with you? You have a voice, and it can serve as the reminder that someone else needs. Remember to share this video as well. Perhaps a friend or relative needs a reminder, a new outlook, or a little prod to keep things in perspective. On this voyage, they are not traveling alone. Share this with them to help them discover the truth. Let's continue the discussion. Remind ourselves that we are all a part of something far greater and spread the word. Your involvement is really significant. Together, let's continue to advance. Thank you for viewing.